and that's the hermit thrush, Catharsis guttatus, bringing us in with a really beautiful bird call. Welcome to the Dissectify podcast, the show that gets you curious about the wild world right outside your window. I'm your host, Nicholas Sines, bringing you content late every Tuesday night. Seriously though, I hadn't heard of this bird before I started prepping for this podcast, and I think I'm actually going to have to try to find it. It sounds like a flute or something. But on with the episode. In 1888, a society was founded in order to map the mysterious and unknown places of the world. 33 founding members were there. Some were willing explorers, while others were there to fund the expeditions. They still exist today, and in 2016 they adopted the tagline, "Further." The society is known today as the National Geographic. They've traveled every continent on the planet, documenting different cultures, environments, and wildlife that they found. This includes the discovery and excavation of Machu Picchu, or supporting the research of the late Jane Goodall. The society was started by the wealthy, but it's still a perfect example of my main talking point today. They've embodied the two ways people can interact with nature. Either you bring nature to the people, or you help people go into nature and explore. Everyone knows National Geographic from their magazines, articles, and videos that showcase the natural world, especially the most striking and outlandish cases. These are examples of bringing nature to the people. Just like watching a video of a natural place, or going to the zoo or an aquarium, you're seeing nature, but not actually in its context. If you've ever been to a zoo and you see some large animal like an elephant or a polar bear, you're seeing an amazing animal, but you're seeing it removed from its natural habitat. You won't see all the behaviors that a wild animal uses to survive day to day. You aren't seeing the interactions it would have had with other animals. The trade-off is that you're much less likely to get trampled or eaten if you would have run into these animals in the wild, which is a pretty fair trade-off, I would say. But zoos and aquariums are very important. They showcase nature to people and support conservation efforts in multiple ways. But they're artificial, right? They're limited to the knowledge of the people, the funding of the zoo, and just they're limited by the resources that were available at the time. And we're still discovering parts of nature all the time. So how can we put that into a natural habitat? And would it even get put in if it didn't have some visual value to the visitors? So in that way, the artificial habitats are just limited. They're not going to have the nuance. They're going to lack the complexity that you would see in a natural habitat if you were actually to walk in one. If you're actually to walk in one of these places that's been around for 100,000 years, or even in some cases 1,000,000 years or more, you're going to see many different interactions and complexities that just won't exist in a zoo or an aquarium. Not only do we lack the skill to put them in, we may not even know about them. And the funding may not be there. So humans are amazing, but we're definitely not capable of recreating the intricacies of the natural world. So then, what am I saying? Am I telling you the only option is to go out into the natural world and risk life and limb to see these animals, to see real nature? Sort of, but not really. There's more to it than that. There seems to be a correlation between the amount of time something takes, or the amount of effort that you put into something, and how meaningful it will be to you. If you travel 1,000 miles and climb a mountain to find that rare organism that you've always dreamed of seeing, it'll be more meaningful in that moment if you've actually made the journey than it would be seeing it in a picture or a video. You've actually done it. You've taken the risk. You've gone there. You've smelled the air. You've shared the view. You've heard the wildlife. You've seen the environment that shaped this organism. And that will just fundamentally be more meaningful than taking the easy route. And I'm not even saying taking the easy route is wrong. I'm just saying it won't be the same. But doing that journey, you're actually going to see the environment that surrounds this organism. It's different than to see a polar bear in real life than it is to see it in a zoo. Not only because it's really dangerous, but even if it were totally safe, it's still different. You're there, you're in the same habitat, you know how cold it is, right? You're feeling it. So, in addition to the money, the effort and the risk are a part of the cost to see these things in their actual habitat. The trouble is, not everyone has the resources to travel across the world looking for wild things in those few places that are far from humans. Even if you did have the resources, is it important enough to you to take that risk? Is it worth climbing the mountain or worth risking a large animal that may not want you there? Maybe it's not worth it to you, and that's okay. The good news is that you don't have to spend thousands of dollars or travel thousands of miles and take all that risk. There's a solution that strikes the balance between the two. Between going to a zoo or seeing a video and going to the ends of the earth to see some animal or plant. And the solution is, all you need to do is go to a place with native plants. A local place with native plants. And if you're there, you'll be able to catch glimpses of this world that's always waiting there for you to see. You just need to find a space, find an area that provides the space that wildlife need, the resources they need to carve out a living. And providing that space with native plants is pretty much all it takes to start seeing some of the natural diversity that's there just waiting to soak into your life. Now, if you have a garden and you're willing to put flowers in it, and you may go to a place like Home Depot and you'll get some bright showy flowers with large petals, and yeah, you could do that. But that's about all you're going to get. You're going to get a bright showy, bright petal show. But as far as other species are concerned, there may be nothing there that they can actually use on those plants. It looks like nature to you, but it's an artificial form that was bred for us to get a pretty petal show. But to other species, it may constitute a barren landscape. A garden that's nothing but grass and petunias is just a monocrop of non-native grass and unusable flowers. There's nothing there for them. It would kind of be like if you had to spend a week in a locked room and the resources you were given was 1,000 extra thick cans of tuna and a single dull spoon. You might be a little bit concerned if you could actually get to the food that you needed. So the biomass is there. It just may not be usable for a lot of these species. In fact, many species have adapted to be very specific in the food sources and conditions they need to survive. And the varieties of plants that we've selected in order to give us pretty flowers that will bloom consistently just aren't there to serve the same role, right? That's not what they were bred for. And in fact, it's not how they survive. They survive by being pretty to us. But that's at the cost of all the other natural diversity that depends on the plants around. So as an example, some bee species can only access a few wildflowers in order to get the nectar they need to survive. Things like buzz pollination and stuff like that are great examples of flowers depending on the local insects in order to actually function and propagate. In this way, valuing the resources that less showy plants can provide, in most cases native plants are not as showy, valuing the resources these less showy plants can provide for other species will bring more depth to the experience you have in your garden, in the spaces that you control. They may not provide that artificial pop of color, but these varieties were bred to provide, but they'll provide a deeper sort of experience. In order to see these lovely wild things, the natural diversity around you, you don't have to go far. You just need to go to places with native plants, or maybe even plant native plants in your own gardens, or parks, or whatever spaces that you have some sort of control over. Plant native plants there, plants that the local wildlife can utilize. And some of that power that humans have, some of that power that we've accumulated, you can use some of it to have a little bit more resources for the species around you and get some of that experience without all of the risk. So I'll end this episode with the Biota Beat section. And today we're covering Trichobitrachus robustus, a mouthful of a name for a freaky frog. Commonly known as the punk frog or the wolverine frog, is a species of frog native to the rainforests of West and Central Africa. It's a nocturnal species that feeds on a variety of insects and other small creatures. It's well adapted to its arboreal lifestyle, so it lives in the trees. Lives up in the forest canopies, and it uses its long arms and fingers to allow it to climb. And it's a fascinating species, not only for its unique appearances, but also its unusual behavior and habitat. So, this species is named after its spiky hair-like projections on its back, which resemble the hairstyle of punk rockers in the 1970s, 1980s in the US, if you happen to be somewhere else. Maybe that still applies? I'm not sure. However, this unusual appearance is not just for show. The spikes seem to serve a defensive mechanism deterring potential predators from attacking the frog. But the most striking characteristic is that the frog, when it feels like it needs to run or defend itself, when it feels threatened. Because we actually don't know why this happens. But when it feels threatened, this frog will snap its bone fingers. It'll snap the fingers. It'll snap the bones in its fingers. And those snapped bones will then poke through the skin out of the bottom of the feet and serve as like cat-like claws. And this defense mechanism is what results in the common name, the wolverine frog. In addition to its physical characteristics, the frog is also known for its unusual behavior. Unlike most frogs, which lay their eggs in water, the Trichobitrachus robustus buries its eggs in the ground, which is very unusual for amphibians. When the eggs hatch, the tadpoles burrow their way to the surface and complete the rest of their development on land. Almost sounds like a reptile. But solidly, it's a frog, amphibian. This unique behavior is thought to be an adaptation to the often dry conditions in its native habitat. This amazing threatened species is one that shows how weird nature can be. Its status is a result of its habitat loss and habitat degradation, as well as many individuals being collected for the pet trade. I'll include some links for the resources for this episode. And yeah, I think the only other thing I wanted to add was that I went to go and visit some tide pools near the coast to me. And maybe this is a good tip, actually. So when you're going to see tide pools, you want to pull up a thing, they have tide pool charts. You can look it up, and whenever there's a negative tide is when the tide pools are going to be especially good. So there will be low tides, but low tides doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a negative tide. So you want negative tides, and you want to find a place that has rocky areas. So yeah, really that's what's needed for tide pools, right? You're going to want the rocky areas for those like carved out areas in the rock to the bowls and cracks in these rocks to fill with water, and then when the water recedes, it's going to stay there. And that's, you can see some really cool species. I'm located in the Pacific Northwest, so I got to see some purple, what are they called? Purple sea urchins, some green anemones, some ochre sea stars, which are keystone species, hermit crabs and snails. I thought I saw a nudibranch, didn't. Got a picture of some harlequin ducks, but yeah, it's good. Some good tide pools. And driving back in the fog was fun too. So yeah, I would say you don't need to go far to explore. And if my experience today is any indicator, also sometimes you have to deal with government telling you how much you can explore, which is fine, I guess. You got to protect the natural resources and make sure nobody's taking things from the tide pools. Don't take things from nature. I mean, unless you're like a hunter or something, at least then you're like using something from nature in order to survive. Don't like take sea stars or whatever else just because. Don't take like living things out of their habitat just because you think they look nice. Right? So we are a part of nature, but if everybody did that, it would be a serious issue. But I will work on the next episode, and that is the tip for today. Negative tides, rocky crags equals good tide pools. And I think that's true basically anywhere in the world. You want to go when the tide is still dropping and know when the tide is going to be coming back up, because there's a risk of, right, you may get trapped if there's not a way back out, so you need to keep an eye. The water is going to be a problem if it's too high, and sometimes you get extra high waves, so you need to be aware. It's not super dangerous, but it can be. Nature is not there to be friendly, but man, I really do like it. So I think that's all I got for today. Please leave a review wherever you're listening. Visit Dissectify.com for more nature exploration tools. That's my fan going off in the background. Thought I made it pretty far into this episode, but anyways, for more nature exploring tools, for my visit my website, Dissectify.com. For my Instagram, @Nicholas.Signs can also be found there. Tag me in your nature photos. I'd love to see them. Remember, you live in a world with so many other species, so get out there and check it out. Thanks. Bye.